It turns out there are people in the world this devoted to a person and to a car. This is the story of a man who, to honor the memory of his wife who passed away from an illness 2 years ago, spent over half a year and a small fortune to ship a used Toyota Celica T180 all the way from Bulgaria. This was the car they had bought together when they were in love. Now he plans to restore and rebuild it as an emotional anchor for the rest of his life. The moment it arrived home, Kurt unloaded it into his yard. As you can see, this is the most classic version of the 5th generation Celica, the T180 with pop-up headlights. From the outside, the car looked to be in relatively good condition, with no major visible issues. But to know its true state, he first had to give it a thorough wash. Kurt began to clean the car, and the process started to bring back the wonderful memories he and his wife had shared in it. After a simple wash, the car's true face was revealed. Besides some aging paints, the exterior was in decent shape, and key features like the pop-up headlights still worked perfectly. To bring this old car back to life, Kurt had already been sourcing some upgrade parts for the Celica, like this rear wing kit. Life gets in the way, and a year passed before Kurt could get back to the project. In that month, editor's note, the narrator says month, but context implies a year, the car parked in his yard had started to grow weeds in its crevices. The tires had sunk into the dirt, and because he lives near the coast, after a year of sitting, severe rust had appeared all over the body. Kurt crawled underneath the car and started by removing the exhaust system, officially kicking off the restoration. He then grabbed a new battery he had ready, connected it under the hood, and was able to drive the Toyota Celica into his workshop. Since he was planning a full overhaul, the entire interior had to be stripped, front and rear seats, and all the trim panels. As each part came out, the cabin grew more and more empty. But when he pulled up the carpet, Kurt was hit with a devastating blow. The floor pans under both the driver and passenger seats had been completely eaten away by rust. This car was not worth restoring. It's not that it was impossible to fix, but the rust was so severe that it posed a major safety hazard. As much as Kurt missed his wife, he couldn't risk his own life. The deeper he dug, the worse the rust became, shattering his hopes. He had no choice but to give up on restoring this specific car. However, Kurt wasn't about to give up on his late wife's memory. He decided to use this car as a parts donor. He would find another car of the same model and transplant all the usable parts and the memories they held from this one onto it. Over the next month, Kurt searched far and wide for another Toyota Celica T180. He finally found an identical model, this blue T180 right here. A deal had already been made with the owner, so after a quick look, Kurt could take it straight home. And those pop-up headlights are without a doubt the soul of this car. After driving it back to his yard, Kurt explained that this Celica was a 1993 model. The paint was also heavily aged, but thankfully the body was in great shape with no major flaws. It drove surprisingly well, and most importantly, the undercarriage was rust-free. This was a perfect replacement. Back in his yard, Kurt tested the headlights and other functions. He did find some minor dings and scratches, so some bodywork would be needed later. A look under the hood and in the interior revealed no major issues. This project would be much easier. The leather-wrapped interior and seats had been perfectly preserved by the previous owner.
Based on the design, it looks like a front bumper and a set of side skirts. With these new replacement parts, the teardown could start. Any reusable parts were carefully set aside. After removing the front bumper, they found the crash bar was also showing signs of rust. To speed things up, they decided to just scrap the original and replace it with a new one. Then they could test fit the new bumper. Since it was a custom kit, it fit surprisingly well with no major gaps. Next, they opened another package. It looked like another body kit piece, and when they test fitted it, it turned out to be a front lip spoiler. Believe it or not, with this lip on, the whole front end looked much fuller and more aggressive. They also test fitted the side skirts. It's clear from these parts that Kurt plans to build this into a young, stylish performance car. But his build order is a bit unconventional, starting with the exterior before even touching the mechanicals or interior. Next up was the rear of the car. They removed the stock spoiler from the trunk and test-fitted the new wing kit he had ready. After confirming it fit, they stripped the trunk bare. The rear bumper was also removed, and here too he had an upgraded bumper. However, since it wasn't custom made for the Celica, it needed some cutting and trimming to fit. This is an unavoidable part of custom car building. After trimming both sides, they mounted the new wing kit. Now the entire rear end was starting to take shape. Seeing that the overall look was good, they could drill holes in the new rear bumper and bolt it securely in place. With that, the initial rear end modifications were complete. Kurt then moved the car out into the yard to get a better look and see if anything else needed to be changed. But without paint, it's hard to get a real feel for the final look. A few days later, another package arrived. It contained some decorative hood vents, but when he placed them on the hood, they didn't look quite right. To mount him, he would have to cut holes in the hood, so they first measured and marked the areas to be cut and then got to work. The cutting was a bit rough, but thankfully it wouldn't be visible from the outside. Besides, Kurt and his friend aren't professional mechanics. Achieving this result is already quite impressive. Next, they removed the car's emblems and the test-fitted front bumper and sent the car to a local shop to have professionals handle the paintwork. When Kurt saw the car again, the original paint had been completely sanded down and filler had been applied to smooth everything out. The hood vents he added were now perfectly blended with the body. Now it was time for the magic to happen. The team pushed the car into the paint booth. Since Kurt wasn't doing the work himself, he didn't film the process in detail, but from the blue paint, you can see he's restoring it to its original color. When we see the car again, Kurt and his friend have already towed it back to their workshop. During that time, they had sourced some lights for the Celica, along with some grills for the front and rear bumpers. Since they hadn't pre-drilled the holes, they had to do that now and cut the mesh to size. They also found a pair of Toyota Celica headlights. They carefully removed the original lights, which were heavily corroded. The new lights appeared to be made of plastic, but luckily they were the same size and installed easily. After replacing both, they tested the pop-up function. After confirming they worked, they could prep the front bumper. This mainly involved mounting the new grills and the small lights he had found. With each piece installed, the front end was finally coming together. And you have to admit, the front end now looks much fuller and more aggressive than the stock version. That's the magic of car modification.
Next up was the rear end, which was much simpler. He just had to mount the wing kit, which gave the rear a fuller look that perfectly complements the style of the front. Then, Kurt opened a mender package. Inside was a brand new set of coilovers, one of the more expensive parts for this build. This gave the two a new target. They immediately started removing the old suspension. The stock parts were no longer needed. They quickly swapped in the new coilovers. But the surprises didn't end there. A new set of wheels arrived at the workshop. Kurt immediately took them to a tire shop and had them fitted with 4 brand new tires. After installing them on the car, he took it for a spin around the yard. Although the car wasn't completely finished yet, its entire presence had undergone a massive transformation. As you can see, the front windshield still hadn't been installed. Kurt took the windshield from the first car, cleaned off all the old adhesive, and transplanted it onto this one. In a way, this was a continuation of their love story. Now he could give the car a full service, draining all the old fluids, replacing the filters, and adding fresh oil and coolant. Any usable parts from the first car's engine bay were also transplanted over. After all the mechanical work was done, he gave the engine bay a deep clean. After half a day of work, it looked brand new. He then reinstalled the taillights that had been removed before painting. He also found a parcel shelf for the trunk. The rear bumper wasn't forgotten either. He cut and installed a matching mesh grille. These details show that car modification doesn't always require a huge amount of money. As long as you pour your heart into it, the final result will not disappoint. Of course, the prerequisite is having a car with good modification potential. The final step for the build was the brake system. He wasn't upgrading it, just cleaning off all the rust and painting the calipers a color he liked. While the method wasn't exactly professional, the final result looked pretty good. And with that, the rebuild of this Toyota Celica is officially complete. Are you guys satisfied with this kind of upgrade?